The 26th of February 1945. Elsdorf, Germany. A tiger sits nose-on behind a broken roadblock turret squared to the street like a vault door. Inside, the crew is loose and sure. They have done this all month. Another American will edge the corner, show a cheek, and the 88 will cut it off. Across the rubble, a Pershing's idle trembles through brick. The driver feathers the clutch. The gunner rides a black circle of glass until the wobble slows. The loader's gloves shine with graphite as he palms a long cartridge and waits for the word that never comes because the word is a breath. The Tiger's commander watches the corner he expects. Shermans always swing wide. Patience is a weapon. He holds his gunner half a heartbeat longer for the clean face shot. The Pershing does not swing. It freezes. The sight picture hardens like ice. 200 meters in a city throat. The first man to stop moving wins in under 3 seconds. The breech bites shut. The world turns white. The 90 punches a straight hole through the Tiger's turret front. A flat furnace blast that folds heat into the crew space and blows sparks back out through the seams. Paint lifts. Dust becomes fireflies. A hand reaches for the intercom out of reflex and never finds the switch. No radio call, no order, just heat. Smoke drifts, and the shape ahead is no longer a shape. The gunner's wrists relax a fraction on the handles. The loader leans toward the rack and then doesn't. Somewhere down the net, a voice asks a question and goes quiet mid-word, as if even the air is listening to the street. Remember how to be a street again. By late February, the Western Front runs on friction. The Ruhr crossings grind forward. Cologne hangs ahead like a stone you must swallow. Germany is short of fuel, short of crews who have seen enough nights. But the street-by-street truth is uglier than any ledger. A Tiger parked nose-on at a choke point still writes the rules for everyone within 3 blocks. American tankers know the pattern so well it feels like gravity. You edge a corner, you show a cheek, the 88 erases the mistake before you can finish a word on the net. That single habit has kept intersections closed, pinned infantry to cellars, and taught engineers to treat every turn as a funeral. The American answer arrives late and under escort, striped and new, with crews learning its weight as they drive. The T26E3 brings a 90 that does not care about legends. There are not many of them, and no one pretends they are a silver key, but they change who is allowed to stand still in the open. A company that has lived months under the tyranny of the first shot now has a tool built to steal that first shot back. If it works here, the tempo of the entire advance shifts. If it fails, the bill is paid in riflemen and litters, one stairwell at a time. German confidence at towns like Elsdorf is not theatre. Since autumn, Panthers and Tigers have punished the same American mistake with the same clean sequence. Let the column compress at rubble, kill the lead, with a frontal punch pin the trail, rake the street, withdraw before the artillery, wakes. Crews have rehearsed it until patience feels like courage. The myth grows from repetition, not from speeches. And repetition is precisely what a new gun and a steadier turret aim to break. This window is narrow. The bulge has just shown what concentrated German armour can do when weather and surprise strip the sky. Bridges are scarce, roads are nerves. Every extra hour, a crossroad stays closed, drags supply echelons backward and invites counterfire. Infantry battalions that should be clearing the next block are instead hauling their wounded down stairwells because the corner remains a killing lane. If the 90 can pry open one such lane reliably, it multiplies into days saved along the core front. If it cannot, then the advance keeps paying retail for every doorway. There is risk baked into the steel. New machines break in stupid ways. Brand new optics fog. Loaders misplace muscle memory under lights that flicker. Commanders push anyway, because the replacement stream exists for the first time at this weight. That is the quiet advantage the other side lacks. A Tiger is a rare asset guarded by caution. A Pershing is a calculated bet that can be repeated. One doctrine hoards, the other spends to gain time. Time is the currency that decides which bridges still belong to whom at dusk. Morale follows math. American crews who have watched friends die at corners begin to speak differently on the net when a 90 checks in. Engineers cut lanes faster. Rifle platoons plan to cross daylight alleys instead of waiting for dark. On the German side, the absence of fuel and veteran hands narrows choices. You pick prepared angles and safe exposures, and the moment a frontal angle loses its certainty, the machine's value forces you to back away. Hunters become guarded pieces. Guarded pieces stop hunting. So the stakes on this ordinary street are not romantic. They are procedural, measurable, and contagious. Prove that a tiger can be forced off a frontal stand at city distance, and the next 3 towns will fight differently before dawn. Fail, and the myth survives to charge interest. The advance either accelerates into Cologne on schedule or drowns in alleys 1 block at a time. All of that lives inside a few seconds where one crew freezes a sight picture and another crew waits for a swing that never comes. A tiger frightens you because it forgives your first mistake and punishes your second. The gunner sits behind glass that stays readable when the hull jitters on cobbles. The 88 throws a flat line. At 200 to 400 meters, it does not ask about your feelings, it simply arrives first and straight. The front is a wall, the turret face thick enough that a Sherman driver learns a reflex: do not show the nose, find a flank, pray the street gives you one. Crews live by a ritual: let the American edge out, let him show a cheek, take the face shot, clean back away before the artillery wakes. It is repetition, not theatre, and repetition builds a myth that feels like physics. The Pershing with a 90 breaks the timing, which is the part of the myth that actually kills you. Inside, the gunner rides a sight that doesn't fish when the driver kisses a brick. Electric traverse is smooth. The turret stops where hands decide, not a half degree later. Torsion bars keep the hull from bobbing your reticle out of the pupil. The loader works behind a breech that eats long cartridges without mood swings. None of that reads like romance until you are staring down a straight German street and trying to make a picture stop moving before someone else does. You do not say 90mm in a tank, you say face or seam. The loader's palm knows what the round is by weight and jacket, not by name. If the commander smells a big cat, the rack gives up a dart with a hard heart. If the street wants walls to fall, the rack gives hay instead. In a city throat, you rarely get elegance. You get 200 to 900 yards of ugly angles, brick dust in your teeth, and 3 seconds to turn wobble into stillness. The first crew that freezes the world wins. The gun that lets its crew freeze faster writes the next sentence on the net. The tiger's strengths don't vanish when an American shows up with a new toy. The optics are still clean. The gunner can still read shimmer and mirage and hold through it. The big mantlet still feels like a shield. But the city crushes range into reflex. Sight lines become rails. Corners erase the distances where the tiger's front used to buy time. The routine that worked against Sherman's patience, cheek shot withdraw, becomes a trap against a gun that punishes patience. If the German waits for the swing, and the swing never comes, he gifts away the one thing he cannot replace: the first steady sight picture. Inside the Pershing, the ritual is brutally simple. The commander's world is tall glass and short words. He does not narrate. He names. The driver flattens the hull with a breath and a clutch tap so the crosshairs stop breathing. The loader plants his feet wide, drags the long cartridge from the rack, and trusts his muscle memory more than his eyes. The gunner holds with wrists, not shoulders, because wrists make smaller mistakes. If the breath count hits 3, they are late. When the breech bites and the room fills with that dry, hot smell of fresh paint and oil, the tank stops being a noun and becomes a hand you are trying to keep still. The tiger's reply is discipline. The commander watches the corner he expects, the one that has fed him kills all winter. The gunner centers the nose, not the road wheels, because the nose tells the truth about where the enemy will be when the trigger breaks. The loader keeps a fat APC shell under his palm because habits win fights until they suddenly don't. He is calm because calm has kept him alive. What he cannot account for is a sight on the other side that no longer wobbles when a brick chips under a track. Penetration charts live in training rooms. In alleys you navigate seams and ports and proud angles. A tiger's turret face is pride metal, but it has lips and hinges and a gun shield that steps. If a dart arrives square at city distance, it finds edges the briefings taught crews to trust. From the American seat, you do not argue about slope or thickness. You aim where the metal changes, shape you commit, and you let chemistry and speed do math. Your brain cannot finish before recoil. From the German seat, the first sensation is not pain. It is air that turns to furnace wind paint, that lifts a white that doesn't blink. A hand moves toward the intercom switch by reflex and never gets there. Mechanical truth hides under the drama. The Pershing's recoil system returns the gun to where it was a half-second ago instead of wandering. That saves a correction you no longer have time to make. The traverse motor starts and stops without overshoot you can feel. That turns a human breath into a held reticle instead of a pendulum. The commander's cupola actually lets him see not a slit with a story, but glass with distance. On the other side, the Tiger's mass is a friend in fields and a liability in constricted stone. The same weight that keeps the gun flat at 800 meters makes it reluctant at a corner where you must pivot now or never. Ammo economy whispers under every choice. Tungsten is finite. No one carries a rack full of miracles. The knowledge that 2 sticks sit in the bin changes behavior anyway. Crews hoard them for faces, not flanks. When the commander says face, the loader's hands move like he has already survived the shot. When the call is hey, the gunner stops hunting seams and starts cutting doors. The power here is not that one round exists. It is that the crew can decide in one syllable which world to solve. Listen to how people talk after a street like Elsdorf, and you hear the physics the charts can't teach. Sherman drivers say alleys feel a size larger when a 90 is on their net. Engineers stop treating every turn as a funeral. German tankers start avoiding frontal lanes, not because the armor got thinner, but because the other side stopped giving them the pause the script requires. The myth doesn't explode, it leaks. It leaks through 3-second drills, through loaders who no longer fumble, through gunners who keep the circle black and still while bricks settle around the hull. In this range band, survival is a choreography. The Tiger's way is patient, punishing, confident. The Pershing's way is abrupt, steadied, indifferent. One asks you to wait for a mistake. The other asks you to remove motion from the world and press. In a city throat where distance collapses and seconds decide the machine that lets its crew steal motion faster, ends the argument. That is why the street goes quiet after the flash. That is why the net pauses mid-word. That is why, when the smoke thins, the shape ahead is no longer a shape. The gunner keeps his wrists loose because wrists make smaller mistakes. The handles are warm where his palms have lived all night. The circle in the glass breathes with him. A slow in and out he tries to flatten until the world forgets to move. The driver takes another half-inch off the clutch, and the hull settles like a held breath. Brick dust makes a taste like a coin. The commander does not narrate. 2 words at a time, spaced like stepping stones, hold. On. Wait. The loader is a rhythm behind his left shoulder boots, set wide calf against the ammo rack, so his weight does not drift. He runs a glove down the long cartridge and knows by skin, not by eyes, which heart sits inside the jacket. Across the street, the Tiger is quieter than a house. The commander leans into a narrow tube of night, one eye on the corner, the other listening for the way sound changes when a heavy shape noses past stone. He trusts a habit taught by months of work. Americans show cheek. Cheeks get cut. The gun answers first and straight. His gunner sets the reticle on the place where corners turn men into silhouettes. The loader pins a fat shell against the breech hand flat to feel the instant the order will come. Calm is not a feeling here, it is a method. He keeps his mouth closed so the gunner will not hear his breath. The Pershing's gunner thinks about how to make the picture stop drifting. He does not think about tigers. He edges the crosshair onto a seam he has memorized from diagrams and swear words, the step where proud metal meets the gun shield on a turret face that has told stories about itself for 2 years. The commander says on, and his voice is bone dry. The loader indexes the round without looking. The world narrows to a ring of black, with a bright square inside it, where a machine becomes a target, and a target becomes a decision. He decides to stop moving. He does not know if the other man has decided the same. In the Tiger, the gunner waits the way he has learned to wait. A swinging American shows the shot for you as if he is helping. You let him finish the mistake, and you press when the sight picture stops longer than his nerve. He tells his shoulders to sink, and the reticle stays where it should, a calm cross along a corner that has fed the crew all winter. The commander's voice is a fingertip on the back of his neck. Hold. Clean. The loader's breath makes a small fog where the lamp bulb rattles. The Pershing's breech closes with a dog's bite. The loader steps back shoulder to steel eyes, already on the next round he will not need. The gunner adjusts a thumb's width and feels the traverse motor answer without overshoot, a rare gift in a place where everything else swings. He sets his jaw against nothing because nothing keeps teeth from clicking when the gun runs. The driver's left boot is a lever that lives under his bones. He holds the hull like another set of lungs. The shot is not loud so much as it is flat. It shoves the chest more than it hits the ears. The alley becomes a white square edged in soot. Sparks move like a sheet torn upward, then sucked back down. The recoil throws the gun back, and the recuperator gives it back in the same place, a kindness the gunner is still not used to. He forces his eye open through an instinct to flinch at light, and finds the shape in the glass is no longer a shape, but a broken geometry of edges and heat. He wants to say something, and does not, because words wobble hands. In the Tiger, the first sensation is air that turns solid. Paint lifts. The flash builds from inside rather than outside, a furnace wind that folds the chest inward. Someone reaches for the intercom switch by reflex, and the space where the switch should be is white noise. The gunner's right hand slides across metal that is suddenly grains and glitter. He has practiced this motion 1,000 times on benches and never once in this heat. The commander tries to speak and finds a voice that has missed its step. He knows the cost before he knows the wound. Silence is a weight that arrives after. The Pershing's crew listens for the 88's answer and hears bricks settling in their mortar. The commander's hand taps the gunner's shoulder, once. Not twice. Twice would mean again. The loader leans toward the rack out of habit and arrests the motion halfway. He is surprised to see his own glove hanging there like it belongs to someone else. On the net, a voice 2 streets away asks if that fire is ours, and then stops mid-word as if the sentence embarrassed itself. The driver wants to roll, and he does not. He holds the hull, nudges a pedal for half an inch of better truth, then freezes because stillness is safety now that the picture has been solved. The gunner rides the fading smoke and learns a fact he will teach with his hands for the rest of his life. When the target stops being a shape, you do not chase it. You wait until the smoke decides you are allowed to see. The commander scans with glass that shows him more than a slit ever did, catching the way heat makes air bend above steel. He says nothing. Saying nothing is the right order. Across the street, a hatch twitches, and then doesn't. A human figure tries to be smoke and fails. The loader in the Pershing feels guilt like a hiccup that never quite arrives and files it somewhere he will open years later when no one is watching. He counts cartridges without sound lips, moving with numbers that do not need voices. The gunner keeps his wrists loose because if he lets tension home, the next sight picture will stutter. The commander resists the urge to narrate for hire. He knows that reports written in the first minute include lies the second minute will correct. The Tiger's crew, those who can still decide, touch each other by elbow and shoulder because words are too large for the space they are in. They have lived on patience and clean geometry. Now the geometry has a hole through its proudest plane, and the patience was a gift to the other man. The loader finds the latch he practiced in winter with numb fingers and discovers that heat makes the same latch turn into a stranger. He pushes anyway. The commander sees his own calm from the outside and does not recognize it. Later, the Pershing's crew will eat quickly under a tarp, and someone will drop a fork because the hand still thinks the gun fired. The gunner will smell burned paint in a clean room and glance for a fire that is not there. The loader will practice the motion of finding tungsten without looking, while he stares at nothing. The driver will drift the tank 2 feet at a time for the rest of the night because small movements feel like breathing and large ones feel like asking for punishment. The commander will walk a circle that matches the turret ring and stop in the same place every time without meaning to. They will all pretend to be bored on the net. Boredom reads as competence and steadies other people's hands. They will answer with numbers and street names and the color of a door where a machine stopped being a machine. They will not say myth or aura or shock. Those are words for later and for other people. What they carry now is simpler and heavier, the knowledge that stillness can be a weapon, that patience can be a trap, and that a single round can edit a habit so deep it felt like physics. When the street finally sounds like a street again, a dog somewhere, a shutter that did not quite die, boots in wet ash, the gunner rests his forehead against the cold rim of the sight and closes his eyes for 1 count. He opens them into a world that has the same buildings and a different set of rules. The commander touches the steel as if thanking a tool is a superstition he is allowed tonight. The loader flexes his fingers and does not notice that they are clean. The driver lets out a breath he has been holding for minutes and will hold again at the next corner because the next corner does not care what they just did. Across the rubble, the Tiger is a lesson cooling in place. The men who step around it tomorrow will speak more softly at intersections. They will look at frontal lanes, the way you look at water you once thought was shallow. The crew that lived inside it will carry a half-second of missing time into every decision that follows. Somewhere in both nets, the language will change by a word or two. Somewhere in both heads, the shape of courage will change by a degree. And the street will keep its marks like a chalkboard that refuses to wipe clean. American units do not win a corner with a single round. They win it with a process that makes that round available, aimable, and repeatable. The 90 in a Pershing is the obvious face of the process, but behind the glass sits a chain that starts months earlier at desks and rails. After the winter's shock ordnance, stops protecting ideas and starts protecting results. The zebra-striped team shepherds new tanks across docks through depots and straight into battalions, with the understanding that teething failures will be solved under streetlights, not in pamphlets. Crews are told to file problems in hours, not weeks. Mechanics ride the column with crates that would normally be left 2 echelons back. The message is blunt. If the gun can change who may occupy a lane, then the army will change how it feeds and fixes the gun. Doctrine moves the same way steel does forward. Company commanders begin to treat the 90 as a door opener, not a line leader or a parade centerpiece. The rhythm shifts a Pershing, noses the corner, freezes, a picture takes the face if it must, and the Shermans flood through with high explosive to collapse rooms and apertures. Infantry reads that rhythm and plans accordingly. Engineers cut breaches, knowing the keyhole can be punched on demand. Radios carry short, functional language that ties these arms into a single habit. The tank that can halt motion takes the first look. The tanks that can carry volume turn the look into ground. All of that presumes a replacement stream that lets officers risk equipment on time, not on certainty. Replacement lives in foundries, and ship manifests items that smell like oil and ink rather than cordite. But it expresses itself as a willingness to push a new hull into a contested block before anyone has written a manual for that block. If a tank dies, proving a corner can be crossed at noon, the schedule absorbs the loss and the formation accelerates tomorrow. On the other side of the street, a Tiger is too scarce to trade for proof. It must be preserved, and preservation distorts choice. You choose exposures that protect the machine rather than positions that break the opponent's tempo. That is how initiative seeps away one rational decision at a time. Fuel is the quiet general in every room. The American column runs a supply mathematics that plans for the worst consumption rate and then oversupplies by routine. Trucks roll on schedules that do not care about weather opinions. Bridging units follow as a matter of course, turning rivers into appointments rather than obstacles. The German column in this period runs on should, not must. Training hours vanish with gasoline. Fresh crews inherit machines that require finesse they have not paid for. In open ground with set ranges, that deficit can be hidden by discipline and terrain. In a night street where the map is noise and angles are guesses, the deficit becomes delay, and delay is death, when the other side brings a gun that rewards stillness. Ammunition economies write behavior as clearly as creeds do. Tungsten shot is not a bottomless well. Loads are curated, not shrugged. Crews carry a handful for faces and save the rest for doors and walls. But scarcity does not neutralize effect. It focuses it. When the commander says face, the loader's hands move with a certainty that comes from knowing he is spending a rare thing at the right time. The gunner accepts that he may never see another dart this block and holds his picture to make the one count. That discipline is contagious across the net. Platoons begin to ask for the 90, where it produces the most daylight for everyone else, not where it can harvest glory. Maintenance becomes part of tactics. Recovery vehicles lurk one street behind because a stuck heavy tank is a roadblock with your name on it. Pershings receive field fixes while their paint is still fresh. Shims here, seals there, a purge of a line, a new drill for a balky traverse because the line will not wait for depot perfection. Crews swap tips over mess tins, and those tips harden into unofficial checklists that save minutes older manuals never measured. The practical outcome is that the tanks which matter most to corner fights are the ones least likely to be sidelined by the kind of small mechanical insult that used to turn a plan into a rumor. The feedback loop tightens until it hums. Every significant contact pushes 3 streams forward: film or photographs when possible, gunnery notes and stripped language about what actually happened rather than what should have. Staffs cut the stories to bone and send them back down within a day or two. The value is not inspiration. It is normalization. Crews start to expect that the 90 will solve a face at city distance under sane conditions. Expectation changes posture. Posture changes speed. The German side feels the same pressures in reverse. Production is admirable on paper and irrelevant in time. A heavy tank might leave a plant as a proof of skill and reach a rail yard as a problem for reality. Rail lines are wounded. Depots are nervous. Fuel allocations turn training calendars into fiction. Crews rotate from losses faster than competence can. Commanders who once chose ambush geometries with a hunter's patience are now asked to guard assets as if they were museum pieces that sometimes shoot. Guarding a hunter produces a paradox. The animal that should choose the fight instead chooses shelter, and the fight moves on without him. Communications shape courage. American nets in this phase wear boredom like armor. Short words, clear place names, corrections that sound like grocery lists. They are not cool for drama. They are cool to protect fine motor control. German nets carry more bursts of static and longer gaps. Silence in a net does not always mean fear. Often it means the radios are sick or power is rationed. But in a fight that is decided by seconds, gaps breed hesitations that would never occur if power and parts were plentiful. The result at street level is that one side expects its orders to cut through at once, and the other side waits a beat that it cannot afford. Bridge classifications and road discipline matter to a gunfight in ways a duel never admits. The heavy hull that brings the 90 does not cross every span on a map, so engineers lead with numbers and steel rather than optimism and prayer. Traffic control carves lanes that keep the door opener where the door is not idling behind rubble because a map trace lied about load limits. When a crossing is contested, artillery moves from backdrop to metronome timing smoke and shrapnel to the breathing of the tank line so that a sight picture can form without a man flinching at the wrong sound. Air is a rumor in weather like this, but even a rumor carries weight. Pilots who can see a block drop a bomb 2 streets over at the minute. A company commander asks for a distraction, and a city that was a single organism becomes a set of separate rooms. Training adapts by subtraction. The ranges behind the lines cannot reproduce alleys that taste like coins. Instructors strip the syllabus to the parts that matter to a 3-second fight sight picture: discipline, loader, footwork in cramped spaces, driver clutch and brake rhythms that settle the hull without seesaw. Fancy gunnery is postponed. Practical gunnery is demanded. Crews rehearse the same breath count until it is muscle memory that does not care about sleep. When they rotate forward, their habits survive, the shock of the first real corner. Command climate determines how quickly all of this becomes normal. Leaders who accept that a new tool will fail in small ways before it succeeds in large ones keep the tool close to the problem instead of sending it to the rear for polishing. Leaders who wait for guarantees receive nothing on time. At Elsdorf's scale, the difference is a captain who decides that he will spend tungsten at 200 meters on a face, rather than hoard it for a flank that may never appear. At a theatre scale, the difference is a headquarters that measures success by blocks gained per day, rather than tanks preserved per week. The moment a tiger's front is treated as an opportunity instead of a warning, German urban doctrine must either harden or bend. Bending requires fuel, and crews and radios and spares they do not possess in this month. Hardening requires standing your ground with a rare machine in a place where the other side now has an instrument designed to punish standing. The rational choice becomes withdrawal from exact places where previous confidence came cheapest. The pattern repeats across towns. The heavy tank that once closed a road now watches a road from a safer angle, while lighter elements trade shots in its place. That keeps the icon alive and loses the lane that mattered. Numbers close the argument that words open, A single heavy tank lost is months of factory attention, skilled labor and transport burned away. A single Pershing lost is painful but budgeted. Men are not numbers, but organizations must treat risk as arithmetic or be eaten by those who do. The Americans spend steel to buy time. The Germans spend time to save steel. Time belongs to the force that can replace what it risks. When time is the currency of a campaign racing toward the Rhine, the side that buys hours with machines writes the map. What looks like a duel at a corner is the visible tip of decisions made by people who will never see that corner. Procurement officers who approve a rush shipment of recoil seals. Dockhands who clear a pier in a snow squall so a crate of optics can move tonight rather than tomorrow. A clerk who reroutes a handful of tungsten cores because a report from a battalion mentioned faces rather than flanks. None of them fire the shot. All of them bend the odds of that shot landing. The most important change is psychological and quiet. American crews stop inventing elaborate plans to sneak past frontal lanes. They start planning to take them. German crews stop planning to harvest the inevitable mistake. They start planning to avoid the moment when stillness across the street means their own death. From those two mental edits spring a cascade of operational behaviors: faster exploitation, shorter pauses, bridges crossed on schedule, neighborhoods surrendered without the old theater of defiance. The war does not turn on speeches. It turns on routines, on supply tables, on drills that shrink a human action to a movement that fits inside a breath. In that sense, the round that drills a hole through a tiger's face is not an outlier. It is a line item behaving as designed inside a system that has finally aligned training parts, fuel, radios, and nerve around the idea that time is worth more than hardware. The corner goes quiet, the map moves, and the myth that once made men hesitate at a street sign becomes another lesson pinned to a board, written in a tone that sounds like boredom, because boredom is how professionals hide relief. They used to say, the front was a shrine. You pointed it at a street, and the street obeyed. Men believed that in their bones because winter after winter, the rule held. At Elsdorf, the rule failed in the most expensive place it could fail on the face. The hole was not just through steel, it was through a habit. After that night's stillness across the way no longer meant hesitation. It meant a 90 that had stopped breathing and was about to take your name off the map. The change does not announce itself with speeches. It shows up in tiny edits to how people behave. A German commander who once leaned into a corner as if it were a stage now measures the angle twice and asks whether a side street will do. A loader who used to keep APC cradled for a frontal gift now slides it back half an inch, waiting for orders that never come because the orders have changed. A gunner who once let patience swell into confidence starts to feel patience as exposure, a long second where someone else can carve a seam you swore was safe. The armor is the same shape, the thoughts inside it are not. On the American net, courage loses its volume and gains a clock. Crews speak in a grammar that assumes frontal lanes are solvable. They plan crossings at noon, not dusk. They expect one calm picture to trump a dozen clever angles. Engineers cut steel as if the corner will belong to them by the time the charge goes off. Infantry breathes lighter, because the street that used to sound like a funeral now sounds like work. No one says myth. They say time, and how to win more of it before dark. Reports from the German side become practical in a way that hurts to read. Avoid frontal at short distance, smoke inadequate, withhold heavy elements until terrain prepared. The words are not panic. They are acceptance. The lesson lands at the level where fingers meet levers. If you wait for the swing, you gift away the first picture. If you show your nose because you always showed your nose, you invite an argument you can no longer win. Hunters begin to ask for shields. Shields were never how hunters lived. The city amplifies this break. In fields, a tiger can still set terms. In alleys, the alley sets them. Distance collapses into 3 seconds of truth, and 3 seconds are what doctrine and industry have taught the American to own. A heavy German tank that once closed a block now guards a block. Guarding is not nothing, but it is not hunting. The cadence of the advance shifts accordingly. Intersections that used to stall whole battalions for afternoons turn one by one into waypoints. You hear it in logistics before you see it on a map. Bridges reached on time, fuel trucks that keep their appointments, artillery schedules that no longer slip because some corner refused to die. Crews who survive a broken rule carry the fracture forward. The tiger men who step out into cold air with their ears ringing do not go back to the old patience the next night. They will still fight, but the spring in the trap is gone. They check the face of every building for the suggestion of glass that doesn't wobble. They imagine tungsten in every shadow. They back off earlier not because they are cowards, but because a rare machine is now a liability when used the way it once was. Every cautious withdrawal preserves a tank and loses a minute. Minutes add up until the river you meant to hold is behind you, and the city you meant to make a point with is merely a place you left. Across from them, the Pershing crews do not grow drunk on it. They learn to respect the thing they killed. They know that in the wrong light on the wrong road, the old rule still bites, but they also know the aura is gone. The voice on their net no longer lowers when someone says tiger. It stays flat, and the flatness is the sound of a door that will open if the drill is clean. They practice the drill until the breath that holds the reticle still feels like a physical object they can pick up and put down. This is the break that matters, not a flag raised, not a city declared fallen, but a private admission on both sides that the old geometry cannot be trusted. German officers sketch their future fights with more arrows that curve away from direct lanes. American officers stop designing plans that detour around the very thing that needs killing. Planners in warm rooms read notes from cold streets and realize the conversation has flipped. One side hoards power and loses hours. The other spends power and buys days. The maps begin to reflect that accounting. Somewhere, a veteran tanker tells a younger man that there was a time when you could park nose on and write the rules for a block. He says it without romance. He says it like a weather report from a past season. The younger man nods and checks his radio battery. The memory is already history. The machine that once wore the role of monster becomes a problem to solve, and the people who wore the habit of deference learn to walk past it. That is the end of the aura. Not a collapse you hear in trumpets, but a slow agreement between enemies that a law of their small universe has been repealed. After that, courage looks different. It is not the patience to wait for a mistake. It is the nerve to remove motion from the world and press the trigger inside 3 seconds. Streets that once carried a warning now carry a schedule. The monster is still heavy, still loud, still deadly in the right field, but in the city throat where this war is finishing, it is no longer a creature that bends time. It is a target that can be forced to move. And once both sides believe that the myth stays dead, Elsdorf does not become a shrine. It becomes a procedure that travels by rumour and report. A heavy German tank parked nose on is no longer a law. It is a problem with a known solution if the crew can hold stillness and the round is right. That certainty migrates through battalions faster than trucks. Infantry officers plan crossings in daylight again. Engineers schedule breaches as if the corner will belong to them by the time the fuse burns down. Artillery timetables tighten because intersections stop stealing afternoons. The advance begins to read like logistics rather than heroics. Film and fragments of film fix the lesson in muscle memory. Men watch the white square of a muzzle flash and the way a turret face collapses, then they watch it again with a pencil in hand to count seconds between commands. In classrooms that smell like oil, and chalk instructors stop chasing perfect range tables and start teaching breath counts and loader footwork. A doctrine that once detoured around frontal lanes adjusts to take them. The map reflects the change in small ways that add up. Bridges reached on time, depots moved forward without drama, river lines touched before dusk. On the German side, the icon becomes an heirloom. A tiger that once closed a street must be guarded so it can close another street later. Guarding turns into yielding. Yielding turns into distance. Distance becomes new orders drawn with curved arrows that avoid the place where a 90 can catch you square. Crews who lived on patience now measure patience as exposure. They are still dangerous in fields. In city throats, they choose to watch instead of dictate. That quiet shift is how a machine loses its aura without losing its weight. Industry hums beneath all of it. The Americans spend steel to buy hours and find they can afford the purchase. The Germans spend hours to save steel and discover time is the scarcer thing. Replacement streams let a captain risk a new hull for a corner that must fall now, not next week. Scarcity forces another captain to hold a rare machine back from the very place it might matter most. Good decisions added together push a front line the width of a city by nightfall. The people inside the tanks carry their edits forward. A gunner who learned that stillness is a weapon treats every alley as a test he can pass. A loader who felt a furnace wind on his cheeks moves tungsten only when a face fills the glass. He resists the urge to spend it on comfort. A commander who heard silence after a shot trusts silence more than speeches. Their habits outlive the town that taught them. The next town is easier. That is how wars end, not in a single grand chord, but in a run of measures that start sounding like routine. Two questions hang in the air for anyone who stays for systems rather than sparks. If this tool had been on the net 6 months earlier, do the famous winter ambushes look smaller, or do they simply arrive sooner with different victims? And even if a Tiger on paper holds advantages at clean range, does paper matter when the other side can replace losses and takes the fight where range collapses? Next, we move to the medium cat with the elegant angles, the Panther, and watch what happens when a supposedly perfect hunter runs into a machine that refuses to stop showing up.